All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the seventh episode of the Flannery O'Connor Book Club. It's been a little while, and the reason for that is this is basically the first weekend I've had to myself in like 3 months. So there you have it. That's why we've had such a big delay. We've got Roxanne here too. Thanks be to God. Good to see you. We chose, or I chose for this book club, The Life You Save May Be Your Own, from her first collection of short stories. It's a little bit shorter, I think, than some of the other ones that we've read, but this one, I read through all of these about 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, and this one stuck in my mind pretty well. So I figured if it was memorable from then, it might be memorable for you guys. So it begins at a very rural farmstead in probably Alabama, based on the towns that I was hearing about, but it could be Georgia too. And we've got an old woman and her daughter and a tramp coming up the road or the driveway. There might not be that much of a difference between them. And the tramp's name maybe is Mr. Shiftlet. He's kind of an odd fellow. He's missing an arm, and he's carrying a toolbox. And the two women, both of them are named Lucy Nell Crater, both the mother and the daughter. So I've seen that with fathers and sons before. I've never seen that with mothers and daughters. So that's fairly interesting. And Mr. Shiftlet seems to have a hard time answering direct questions, and so also does Mrs. Crater. And they negotiate a little bit and try and figure things out. And they determine that Mr. Shiftlet can stay around if he's willing to help fix this old farmstead here. Apparently, Mrs. Crater's husband died 15 years ago, and she might not have the energy to do all these things himself. So he sets about doing that, and by the account of the book, he's actually fairly competent as a carpenter, despite only having one arm full use of. He's fixing things up pretty well. He's able to get the old automobile going. And there's an interesting line here on page 177 of my collection that Mrs. Crater was ravenous for a son-in-law. Which is quite the striking phrase there. And what we find out about Miss Crater, the younger, is that she's completely deaf, can't really speak, and seems to be continually a little unsure of what is going on there. It seems like Mr. Shiftlet really wants the car. He's very into the car. He puts a lot of work into fixing that old car up and giving it a fresh coat of paint. And in exchange for the car, he agrees to go down to the county courthouse and marry Miss Crater. And he's got this whole thing that he insists that he take her out on a honeymoon, because that's the way that his mother raised him, and that we absolutely had to do that. And so they go to the county courthouse. He gets the blood test and the paperwork. They're married, and he takes her off to Mobile. And when they stop for lunch, she falls asleep at the lunch counter, and he decides that this is just the opportunity he needed. Told the guy behind the counter that she was a hitchhiker and he was just going to be moving on, and starts driving in his old car towards Mobile. And he picks up a hitchhiker himself, a young boy who seems to be running away from home. And he begins to impress upon this boy the goodness of mothers, and how he should have treated his own mother better, and how he needs to go home. And the boy is so disgusted by this that he ends up getting out of the car. And there begins to be a lot of rain falling. And Mr. Shiftlet felt that the rottenness of the world was about to engulf him. He raised his arm and let it fall again to his breast. "O Lord," he prayed, "break forth and wash the slime from this earth." and then the rain begins to fall in earnest, and he sticks his car out and or sticks his stump out the window and races the rain shower into Mobile. And that's where our short story ends. So not that long, but there's a lot of fun details in there. Yeah, what did you guys think?
It wasn't nearly as depressing as the other ones, so that put this easily in like the top, I don't know, top 3, I think, of the ones we've done so far.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely wasn't as depressing as the other stories so far, but also interesting the high contrast dichotomy between how he speaks and what he does. It's like, I mean, there's a kind of a strong message there as to what's actually going on in the world at the time. Yeah, and I've been watching this guy, Ryan Reeves, has a YouTube channel. He goes through the history of the church, and it's rather good, and it's very long, and I haven't finished it, but wow, adding a lot of context to. I already got through the parts of the. He's not really going through it in order, but kind of in order. I already got through parts of the sort of Protestant ethos, if you will, within the United States, and the original revival movement and all that. It's like, oh, yes, these stories make a lot more sense actually. So this is interesting timing to have found that wonderful channel and then read this particular story.
As a writer, I'm always, when I start getting back into Flannery, I always feel so inadequate as far as like, I used to think I was going to go into fiction. My first children's book was fiction, but I'm such a linear thinker. And as I read it, I see how much like strategy is involved in setting things up and how all these details come together. And that's where I get I think so linearly that I'm sure like she has she figured out a pattern for it. And so really all her stories kind of follow this pattern. Like she figured out the flow and just in all of her writing experience and stuff like that. But I'm always like, just all the details and how they all lead to something and you're kind of on the edge of your seat. And like, even thinking about this character walking up and there's 2 women there and one is they're really both very vulnerable. And I read it at a time that I was, interesting timing because I was being cyber stalked because of a column that I wrote and actually had some veiled death threats recently. And then I read this story and I'm like, oh man, like he could like, they're just alone out there in the boonies, and then it's like anything could happen. So it made me, I think, even more nervous than I would have been normally. I had read it before, but it had been a while. I did remember, what I remember was, I remembered the scene in the, restaurant. I will say, I'm not sure if it's believable that she would fall asleep at the counter because I feel like that's a convenient detail that I feel like if you're kind of sleepy and the car stopped and you went in to get a bite to eat, you would be actually energized and wake up a little bit. So, but of course I don't know the state of her deficiencies and such, but that was one where I'm like, I don't know if that would happen. It was
just a little too convenient, huh?
Yeah. So, and then, how the little boy comes in too, so that we can kind of get into his head a little bit more, and then he disappears. He just leaps out of the car, it just kind of appears for a little bit, but everything is useful. But yeah, I guess that was one detail I thought was maybe I questioned it. So anyway, but always impressive the way all the details. I love how she describes things, and it just tickles your funny bone, I mean, it's so Southern too. It's a kind of a world away from us Northerns up here.
Yeah. And, it was really interesting when Mrs. Crater sees Mr. Shiflett coming up the driveway, it says right away, even from a distance, that he was a tramp and no one to be afraid of. Right, so that was it was just a real interesting detail that she's throw right there, and it's really interesting that I think the most interesting relationship is between the two characters in the story who do the most talking, right, and both of them, when they're at the outset of the story, they both want something, right? And Mr. Shiflett wants this car, and Mrs. Crater wants the son-in-law, and but neither of them like go about getting it in a good way. Like Mr. Shiflett's just lying about this constantly, and when he talks about like all the different jobs he had, it's just sort of like, well, maybe he had these jobs, but like, I don't know. He's 28 years old, and he's like been in the army and done, a gospel singer and a railway foreman and all that. Like, you sure about that? He does seem to actually be able to fix things. So he's got the, he's got everything he needs to actually take Mrs. Crater's deal, right? Like, look, stay on the farm. My daughter can cook and clean and take care of the chickens, and like you'll want for nothing, except for maybe a little bit of intelligent company, I suppose. But he and like she must have known that he wasn't going to stick around. Like,
no, I don't think so. I mean,
you don't think so? You think he pulled the one over her?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, part of the point of the story, if I can be so bold, is that the world, and we've seen this theme before. This is the only theme in this one, right? The world is going well when his enchantments are working, and when his enchantments fail, when he's not getting the results out of his manipulations of other people, it's the apocalypse, like actually, right? But then at the same time, you have this backdrop of Southern hospitality, which is very real. It's wonderful, by the way. It's awesome. Highly recommend. And that world of the itinerant man who's looking for a place to settle down was real back then. I mean, I think it's probably a perennial thing, but whatever. It was certainly real back then, particularly in the South. You see that in Steinbeck's writing. So I'm not making this up. It's kind of everywhere in the people that wrote about the South. And there's no particular reason to disbelieve that he might want to settle down with such a good deal. And she's desperate. So, right. And he even puts the time in, gets her kind of saying a word. So, there seems to be, something genuine there. And yeah, I mean, I do sort of wonder when she wrote this, if this was earlier on or later on, but that setup to give that contrast to see what's going on in the South, because all throughout the story, this could go very well or it could go very badly, right? And given to I guess the Honorable George Speed's earlier point. Right. Most of the stories have been really horrible, and this one, I mean, this isn't the normal sort of horrific ending that one might have supposed out of this particular author. So, yeah, I mean, I think it really, it's more of this is sort of trying to explain to the world how things are down south at the time. Right, because that seems to be her theme, really, is just sort of exemplifying that, and like I said, I mean, Steinbeck did, I would say, much the same. I mean, he's doing different things too, but much the same thing, right? Just showing people that this world is a different world from, whatever generic America you have in your mind, right? If you're from down south, you're from down south, and you ain't like them other folk. So,
and yet. Human nature. She has such a grasp on human nature, and no matter where you are, human nature is the same. One of the things that I pulled out as I'm thinking about it is the use of humans. They're both using this girl, and I think the mom's use of the girl is more insidious yet. as a mother myself, I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to throw your daughter under the bus, this vulnerable daughter? You're just going to like, So in a way, I think the mother is much more insidious in her use of her own daughter and just being willing to do whatever just to get a little help around the house or whatever. I can understand and sympathize for her need to have someone more dependable around the farm, but to just sell her daughter out like that is creepy.
Like after a week of knowing this guy, like that's a pretty short courtship right there, Exactly. You don't really get to know anybody in a week, even if you're, rubbing shoulders with them all the time.
And she didn't know, and the daughter didn't know what was going on. You know what I mean? She couldn't have consented. She was completely oblivious, which is just horrifying. So
a pattern that really stuck out to me. So something that I locked onto, and then just like a Rottweiler just did not let go of, was the fig tree. Is as soon as that popped up, I was like, okay, let's see all the fig trees. I need to see where all the other fig trees are. And some of the sort of patterns that came out were, because I was like, okay, we're going to start kind of seeing like, are things bearing fruit? Is that fruit good or not? And I was looking at the old woman, Mrs. Crater, and so she has no teeth. So she's ravenous for a son-in-law. She lacks the thing that's needed to integrate, and she's having a really difficult time trying to integrate other things. And because she can't integrate personally, she's using baits, like explicitly she's using baits throughout the entire thing, to try to draw in everything that she needs. But she has borne fruit. She has a daughter. She has a homestead with a deep well. She's well established.
And no mortgage.
No mortgage. She has cash. Even when she negotiates, Shiflett is pretty certain that she has a decent stash of cash somewhere, which he doesn't push for. But there's something really interesting where he comes up the road, and so he has no stability. He's repeatedly rejecting stability throughout the entire thing, but he has everything needed to integrate and a desire to. So he walks.
Oh, he wants the car though.
Well, he gets the car, but who knows how long he's going to have that, right? I mean,
no, I think he really wanted the car, and so like he doesn't want the stability. You're absolutely right that he's got the ability to settle down and do the farm life. He fixes the place up pretty well. He gets that 25-year-old Ford working, like he's got all the skill he needs and these sorts of things to do. His end of the bargain if he took it, but he wants the car. Like that's what he's most, he's like gets that a nice fresh coat of paint. Like that's really important to him. So I interrupted you there, but
well, I don't disagree. I mean, and also he literally has all the tools needed, like in his hand. He shows up with the tools and everything. But we also see him near the end with this kind of dread of, and even the imagery of the light behind him and in front of him being obscured. So it's like he's now kind of isolated himself forward and backwards. And so he has a dread in there. It's probably not a conscious want, right? But like there is something that it's like he even describes something at one point. I think he says he has a moral intelligence, and he was amazed by himself saying that, right? And so like he is putting on a con, but there is part of it that it's like it's almost like he feels like he needs this, but what he actually is going to do is going to be something else. But it's that type of thing where it's like, for one, you don't really know what you're up to, but also you can, knowing is 0% of the battle also. So it's like, well, yeah, I know what I ought to do. Whether or not that actually happens, or if I just, sure, I know that I want stability, that, yeah, I'd love to be married. I'd love to have a house. I love the sunset and it's here every day and everything. But also I might just throw all of that away for $17 and some change and a car, it's like, and just come what may, I might wind up doing that instead. So yeah, just very interesting, but for sure the fruit thing and the fact that he's all externals, right? He's really focused on the way that he dresses. He shows up in a suit with a hat, very intentionally placed and everything. He's very intentional even about the yellow band that he does around the car when he does the paint and everything, all very unnecessary. things. So I think of like the fig tree that was all leaves but never ever ever bore fruit. But there was a whole bunch of leaves, and he's just fixing all these external things, but he can't fix himself. He can't build lasting relationships or any of these things.
And it's interesting, we don't get much insight into his interior disposition until the very end of the story.
Mhm.
And, when he's he's coming home, when he's driving out for his honeymoon, he feels kind of bad. Like, this isn't actually what I wanted. And, now what? And then he feels worse after he abandons Miss Crater at the diner, right? So, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll just drop my problem off, and now I have my car, and now I have my freedom. But it's interesting. He starts off like the very first thing he says is, there was a guy who did a heart surgery, and he held the heart in his hand while it was beating, and he doesn't really understand anything about it. Like, yeah, he really doesn't understand anything about it. After the wedding, he says, all of the blood tests and the paperwork, it just really doesn't understand me, It's like, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't understand you at all. I can't actually disagree with that. That's not how human beings work. But guess who also doesn't understand you? You don't understand you. And you made your life worse when you left Miss Crater at the diner. And now, like, you have this desire to see the slime and the filth of the world washed away. Well, where are we going to start with that?
I think
then that gets us. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry to cut it. Just spiritually speaking, coming back to the car being the object of his desire, it's kind of like in the spiritual life, we get so fixated on that one thing. And then all these blessings, kind of like the fig tree, it's all around, but we're so fixated. Like you said, and from the very beginning, that was all he wanted. And God was trying to give him no, you can have a family and you can have love and you can have stability and all this. But he could not. His blind spot was he just wanted the car. And in the end, it's like he missed all of the things that God was trying to give him. So anyway,
and he would have had the car too.
Yeah, and the car. He could have had it all. Could have had a child. He could have, been a dad and taken his kids on a ride in that car. Anyway, Father Eric, you were saying.
Yeah, that gets us to the title of the story, right? The life you save may be your own, and he sees that on billboards driving by as some kind of government, hey, slow down and maybe don't drink so much. Government spends a lot of money on advertising, actually. Which is interesting. And it's like Flannery juxtaposes the signs that say the life you save may be your own, so drive carefully, with his interaction with the hitchhiker, right? And he's, after having done all of this, after having rejected the stability and maybe even the opportunity to become a somewhat honorable man, even if it's not the way he imagined it, he immediately turns around and tells the kid to not do as he did, but stay at home, stick it out. These relationships are important, and your mother's important. You can't just abandon those things. So it's just just like the very beginning of a dawn of awareness of the state that he's in, and maybe he's actually opening his eyes up just a little bit to see his own miserable state. And he's maybe actually beginning to have a little bit of understanding of himself, but it's not quite at a conscience level yet. He just sees himself, a reflection of himself from an earlier stage, and decides not to go that way again, or at least to try. He can't guarantee these things, but he's going to try.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's way too optimistic. He's just running the next con, and he's caught in the pattern of con. I mean, the beginning of the story starts out with him basically doing a fairly good rejection of materialism, flat out, materialism's stupid, doesn't tell you anything about the world. Agreed, right? But then that's what he's caught in. He's caught to Roxanne's earlier point, he's stuck with his desire for that car, and it's not clear in the beginning that it's going to end that way at all. Like it does at all points seem like it could go either way until the marriage, and you're going to interpret that two ways. Like, well, this was the con all along, or you could say, no, once he got married, he realized he was tied down, and that's what he couldn't abide. And so, like, this is what I like about her ways to read the transition points in her stories, because she's deliberately, keeping it real, if you will, and she's probably just observing the world and writing what she sees, to be honest, because I don't know how you could write this on purpose. I don't think it's possible. Right? So it really is just a matter of, okay, well, is this interpretation, or is it this interpretation, or is there something else going on, right, around his relationship with his mother, right? Now you have three things that it could be, right? Mm-hmm. And there's probably more, but there's three obvious ones right off the bat, and there's really no way for the reader to know. And I, of course, love open-ended sorts of stories that don't have a resolution, right? The resolution is just a continuation in your imagination and extension of the story. So it really, but those are the sorts of things that make you think, right, about the world in general. So that's what I really appreciated about this one in particular. This is particularly clear in its we'll say open-ended interpretations of what was actually happening there, because he could just be a con man who's caught being a con man forever,
Yeah, but so maybe, and like we don't see any firm signs of repentance, but he doesn't say break forth and wash the slime from this earth to anybody in particular. The hitchhiker's out of the car already. There's nobody left for him to con at that point. Yep. And like the resolution of the tale would be clear if he turned around. He didn't turn around, though. He keeps on driving to Mobile. But sometimes repentance is kind of a messy business, and people put it off and they delay in it, and they torture themselves by refusing to just go talk to the priest and get their sins forgiven. And they'll do that. They'll do that to themselves for years, and then one day something shifts and they actually repent. So it does happen.
Sometimes you just have to turn the pain up high enough, and then they finally, that tends to be how it goes. I really like the point of the outward rejection of materialism and then never actually escaping it. Because I won't go into the whole thing, but I witnessed this. I mean, you see it all over the place very often, but it was very striking that I encountered a guy who was a guest speaker at an event that was trying to do something that was supposed to be very kind of religious, but also kind of like reconciling, certain kind of like popular things with it. And I was like, okay, we'll see how he does this. And he openly rejects materialism explicitly right at the beginning. And by the end of it, he had never been more materialistic. And it was just really sad to see that it was like he stopped at the top of a slide and said, I reject all slides, and then just slid right down it. Was just ridiculous. But that type of thing, and he never noticed. He did not see it. Even when people brought it up to him at the end, he could not see it. And he was someone that had been, doing this type of thing for decades. And he had actually made almost like a business out of this, doing talks and stuff like that. And he could not see what he was up to. But I also wanted to quickly point out something that I only just noticed. I had it highlighted, but I didn't know why. So at no point does he actually sleep in the house. He was sleeping in the car the whole time. And there's a funny little exchange that goes on where she says, you can hang around and work for food as long as you don't mind sleeping in that car. And he says, why, listen, lady, the monks of old slept in their coffins. And she says, they wasn't as advanced as we are. And the juxtaposition of sleeping in the car as coffin, and now that's his new home, right? Like, he's just rejected his thing. If he can't find a place to make money and spend that $17, if he doesn't spend that super quick, he might just be continuing to sleep in that car, and also, like, who knows what happens on the road, right? So, especially as a one-armed man, kind of just driving around and everything. I'm not saying that there's a potential interpretation here that he gets in like a car wreck or something like that, but the point is, like, he's put himself in more danger um, by rejecting everything, and then also he's still very much kind of he's sleeping very much in kind of like a coffin of his own making. Like, he's actually rebuilt this car and everything, and it still remains kind of like a tomb for him, and that he is able to roll away on.
I can't help thinking, I know, Mark, you probably haven't read this, and maybe you, Castle, haven't, but I know Roxanne is remembering the novel Wise Blood, which is what she wrote. And there's just this famous exchange in it where the main character, who's a similarly troubled fellow, says, with a car like this, you can go anywhere. And the guy who sells it to him says, some things could take you to some places. And like that's just really on my mind when I read this story. It's like, the way that Flannery sees the car, right? Which isn't necessarily the way that everybody sees it. It's that, like, it's a promise of freedom right there. Like, you could just hop in the car and you can go anywhere, and nobody's really going to stop you, and it just opens up possibilities there, and keeping the possibilities open. And that's kind of a thing I thought about my hometown, Fargo, is that the very center of the town is not a cathedral or a government building or a park or something like that. The very center of the town are two crossing interstates. Like, that's what we're built around. And it was built on a railway. It was a railway town first, and then it became crossing interstates. And so Fargo is just a place that and I love it dearly, but it was built as a place that you just go through, not a place to abide there. And so I think, when we see these cars in Flannery O'Connor, like, she could see the change, probably even from the time she was a child to getting into that post World War II era of the building up of the American highways and the mobility of the things, and the promise is the promise is of freedom, but not everybody actually fulfills their promises. So
here's a question. So I went to a Catholic writers conference in Chicago not long ago, and there were fiction writers there, and they mentioned that almost always they are part of their story some way. So where is Flannery? I mean, I definitely see her a little bit in the disabled woman as far as her limitations and such, and kind of how the world kind of goes around, and then she's just kind of in the center of this, just kind of observing,
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts about where she might have placed herself? And I suppose in some way, and again, she's so keenly an observer of human nature. So, but anyway,
maybe she's the hitchhiker right at the very end.
Yeah.
What's he say? Because she could have a pretty sharp tongue.
Well, something about the devil, right? Was
Yeah.
that was kind of seemed a little bit stark. Like, I wondered, where did that come from?
You go to the devil, he cried. My old woman is a flea bag and yours is a stinking polecat.
Yeah, I could see her kind of just because her frustration over human nature and her keenness about it, just spitting something like that out. It seemed a little jolting, but at the same time, they had to get rid of him somehow.
Well, like that kind of line is also reminiscent of what we saw in Revelation from the mentally ill / possessed young lady, where, like, why is this guy a drifter? Was his mother actually a stinking polecat? Maybe, and like maybe that's where he ended up being in his maybe that's how he ended up there, and this character is like the only one who says what he's really thinking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And it's just brief and quick, yeah.
Except some character calls it interesting too. there are all these materialist allusions to the to the wonder of the world, right? The wonder of creation. But there ain't no church nowhere in this one.
No, just like at Parkersback, they go to the county judge to get married.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And he leaves unsatisfied, and mind you, also probably unsatisfied because it's technically not a valid marriage. I mean, the poor Ms. Lucy Nell is she can only say bird. How can you get how can you confirm the consent for a marriage? I'm not sure how that got past the court system, even by their own standards.
You thinking this is like a 1095 or a 1093?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
I mean,
sorry, 1094.
It's interesting because, you end up in this situation where, it is, we'll say the main theme of the story. It's sort of hard to talk about this with her, but the main theme of the story that Dan got no religion and that's why he's not satisfied, or is it something else, right? Is it, he's just a wanderer and he thinks he'll be satisfied, but then when he, when it comes right down to it, he's like, oh no, this didn't work, or, and I tend to think it's the confluence of, a bunch of these things sort of coming together. And it's like, oh, I see. This is, all of these things are tied together. And if you don't have the one, you can't have any of the others, right? And which makes the stories, to my mind, even though I don't think anybody or many people would necessarily identify them, these are highly symbolic, way more symbolic than what people would call a symbolic story, at least from my perspective, with all the patterns going on and the threads and the way that things either come together or don't come together, right? Because there's something missing from the story. It seems to be part of, I've only read the book club one so far. It seems to be part of what she's getting at is the myth. She's pointing at the missing thing, which I can't think of a more appropriate way for a female author to talk about these subjects, certainly, other than pointing at the missing thing without ever mentioning it directly.
And I think you mostly only get those references with the female characters. So you've got the female court clerk who is running that, but we don't really get any of her dialogue. And then at the end, there's the reference to Shiflet's mom, who taught him prayers, and his regret of having left her. And he includes that in his kind of lament of regret. And then Ms. Lucy Nell is referred to at least once, but I think actually twice, as an angel of God. So you have this contrast of like the extreme simplicity and and the fact that she really is the only like completely innocent party in this. I mean, maybe
because the kid at the diner says she looks like an angel of God.
Yeah.
And then when he's giving his speech to the hitchhiker, he says, "My mother was an angel of God."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
there's that continual reference to Miss Carter's innocence.
Mm-hmm. There's something really interesting too with the. I enjoyed just the contrast several pages apart, where we get the initial description of Shiflet as seeming to be a young man, but he had a look of composed dissatisfaction, as if he understood life thoroughly. But then you get over to where it describes her. Let me see. And where it's asked how old she is. And the mom lies and says 15 or 16. Really, she might actually be older than Shiflet by like a year or something like that. But it says specifically that because of her innocence, it was impossible to guess. And so I just thought that's a really interesting kind of juxtaposition between, okay, sure, she hasn't really left the place, but also she's no stranger to manual labor or any of these things. Her ability to communicate is very impaired, but at the same time, she seems to be just fine at getting things done around the farm. But just that, and the fact that she's kind of compared not just kind of materialistically to an angel because, you know, she's pretty and pure and everything like that, but also just that that simplicity kind of keeps her out of trouble in the same way that all the smart people do. And it reminds me of, there was like a little side tangent where this religious order, they have monks, priests, and nuns, and a bunch of the nuns were specifically religious sisters. I always mix the two. A bunch of the religious sisters were there, and some of the younger ones were kind of debating on whether or not it was appropriate to use cosmetics when kind of just going out doing normal work. And a priest called over another sister and said, "How old do you think she is?" And they said, "Oh, you know, probably 25, you know, around us, you know, something like that." And he said, "No, she's 46. And she's like, "Do you use cosmetics or anything?" And she says, "No," you know, and he said, "This is what the practice of virtue looks like." You know?
Nothing like clean living.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's also so did they marry teenage girls in the South or what? I mean, I'm like, isn't that like statutory rape kind of material?
Well, it depends on what the age of consent was set at, but if they didn't set an age of consent, then
there might not have been one back then. Age of consent's a fairly new thing. And yeah, it's part of the moving up of the like the whole like age that you can work at. Like these things went together, right? Under the auspice of quote protecting children, which always I just gotta I'll just out myself. I worked at 15 and I was pissed that I couldn't work sooner. I was angry, still mad. I was like, what the hell? And I did all kinds of paperwork. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Right? I didn't even understand any. I was like, what is this nonsense? Right? And then it's, oh, they had children in the mills. It's like, it builds characters. Lose an arm or something's fine. I didn't care. Not even a little bit. It's interesting though. Now your name is Aaron. Jeez, I can't keep track. Castle. It's interesting when you said it. It made me sort of think about. This is why I love book clubs, at least with intelligent people like you all, as we say down here. It made me wonder if maybe she's pointing at feminism at the same time, because all the movers and shakers that sort of constrain our erstwhile one-armed man and control his life are actually women. And I didn't think of it until you mentioned it, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's this whole other thread in the story that I didn't even see. Like, you know, he may be, we'll say, a bad actor or whatever. But they're all either complicit or also bad actors, except for the one, we'll say, object of perfection, which, you know, and then obviously there's the sneaky divine feminine just kind of sitting there, a little obviously, it's angel of God, clearly. Okay, whatever could we be referring to? I cannot guess. That one was easy. The Aslan thing, not so easy. That one was easy.
Yeah.
What do you think about this bit where he describes a body that a man is divided into two parts, body and spirit? And he says the body lady is like a house, it don't go nowhere, but the spirit lady is like an automobile, always on the move, always. And so he's like, there's this interesting thing where he describes two parts, but then he's describing this complete disconnection between the two parts that comprise him.
Well, that sort of points me back to what I was saying earlier. It's really not clear from the story if he was at one point interested in settling down or not. Right? Like, it's just not like I mean, I'm sure it's deliberate. she goes to great lengths to put you at the edge of that question, you know, multiple times. And, you know, and it seems at the end, like, you know, part of him knows he made the wrong decision there, which implies he knew he had a decision to make. So yeah, I mean, and I think I think it's good for I don't want to hammer it too hard, but also this is a very sort of Protestant problem and Protestant way to think about the world. That struggle between these two things that have suddenly become a dichotomy for no apparent reason other than all of the obvious ones that would be obvious if you read the history of Luther, I guess, or watched on Ryan Reeves' channel. Oh well, this all totally makes sense as to why you're struggling in this particular direction, which is the battle between the internal and the external. And he very much has it. Flannery very much has it flipped for the character in here, right, where the body doesn't move, but the spirit does. And it's like, well, but that the body's the thing that allows us to move in a way, because the spirit is supposed to be kind of everywhere all at once in a way. Would be a more standard interpretation, we'll say, religiously. And so it's very flipped. And so it's hard to tell, well, is this the struggle? Is it because it matches, the sort of Platonic idea, right? That we're two halves and kind of put together, and we struggle and until we find our other half and all that craziness, right? It's just one layer down. It's contained in one person, which is a very common mistake that people make when they get into these sort of theological type ways of understanding humans. Because if you do divide us in two like that, then yeah, you run into all these problems. On the other hand, if you don't recognize that something's drawing you, and then there's physical constraints, and you need to mediate that, like that's your job. It's mediation, these two things. Then so there's a point to it. It's just you have to frame it correctly. And I think that's part of what's in the story, is that framing is not right. That's why I thought, yeah, it's really on the edge how this is going to end. I really don't know how this is going to end. And for a while I thought, well, they were going to drive away and get into a car accident. It was going to get unresolved that way.
So I have a question. What's in Mobile? What is?
I don't know.
Mobile, I mean, it's a port town. It's probably just the biggest town near there. That's why I think this one probably took place in Alabama rather than Georgia.
What do you think he's seeking there? Like symbolically, what is it, do you think?
Well, yeah, I think
it's the name.
I don't know if he's thought that far ahead.
No, it's the name.
Exactly. I think. Okay.
Mobile. Yeah, he wants to be mobile. That's it. I think it's real straightforward. Flannery doesn't to hide anything. She hides it all in the connections. She just talks about it matter of factly, because everything that's quote hidden, if that's fair, is in the connections. It's not in the that's why now you have another name. The venerable Thompson Bright. When he mentioned all the female connections, I was like, wait a minute, was he actually making a feminism commentary here? Because wow, because I didn't see that at all in the beginning, but once he pointed it out, I was like, oh, well, that's possible too, because there's just and she does tie so much stuff up in these little stories. It's really rather remarkable, and those are sorts of short stories that I personally prefer. I prefer short stories because I'm dyslexic, so I can't read 100 pages. It drives me nuts. Forget about more than that. So it's nice.
Yet you have in fact read 700 pages because I made you.
I know. Well, I was under some sort of orders, so I felt I had no choice. Father.
I think it's interesting that she paints women as like subtle in their tone and and yet at the same time Flannery is not at all, like in her actual person. That's not her. So it's interesting that does she see that, or is she just connecting that to womanhood? I don't know. It's interesting because she's so spirited and direct, but her stories, are not always. I mean, everything is subdued and undercurrents, so anyway, yeah.
Well, I think that just from personal observation, women who tend to be more spirited and direct, fall into two basic camps, right? One is, they're spirited and direct and they don't know or care about any other way, right? They're just kind of out to get things done. Over time they may flip, because I've seen this happen too, where they sort of like, oh wait, I'm not subtle, I'm not feminine, and that's causing me problems. This directness thing is great because it enables a bunch of things, right? Because women already have the power of pointing, we'll say. They can already direct people pretty well. It's not that hard for them. It's just different for men. But to be direct, it gives them an extra force, right? Because men will be like, oh, wait a minute, why is she be direct? Like, I'm used to that. What do I do? Help, right? And so it kind of puts a lot of people on their back feet, right? Including other women. But some of them don't necessarily recognize that the subtlety is something that can also be used and has a different set of effects that are appropriate in different circumstances. So it could be that longing in her or something that, because I think a lot of women who learn to be direct, they just end up thinking these other women are cattle. They don't know what they're doing, right? But actually, many of them do. They're able to pull off things that direct women can't. They can't fathom it. They can't even, like, how did that happen? I don't understand how that worked. So that might be part of that longing. Who knows now? Way guessing now. I'm way guessing.
The feminine genius.
It's actually, if you know what you're doing, Roxanne, it's not that hard to get me to preach a particular homily.
Ooh, okay.
You just, I'm sure you know better how to do it, but like, I've watched myself like have a conversation one day, and then the next Sunday I'm talking about that problem in front of 100 people now. It's just, how did this happen? Who knows? It's very mysterious. So.
Well, I'm the same way when I write about something. When I find an idea for a column, it might be something that someone throws something out. Now my brain's wrapped around it, and I've got to figure it out and write about it, because I learn in the writing, like you learn in the preparing a homily. So we're interesting creatures, and Flannery knew it.
Did she ever?
I like there's this part where just as they're leaving the courthouse from the marriage, Mr. Shiflett says that he wasn't satisfied. The old woman says sharply, "It satisfied the law," and he says, "It's the law that doesn't satisfy me." And I think there's also, to Mark's previous point, just this thing of kind of indirectly pointing towards church things without actually saying them. There's a lot of this kind of issue of the, in a certain sense, like being free of a whole lot of hierarchical structure, and then simultaneously being subject to much more legalism and constraint that does not satisfy or does not actually build up to anything in particular. And it's, I don't know, I really like this kind of this highlighting of these characters who do not have that kind of structure, but then the kind of contrast between the ones that insist, no, this is how it's supposed to be, that is sufficient, and everything doesn't matter how you feel about it, and these sorts of things. And ultimately, like, a lot of times how you feel does not really influence, a necessary structure or something like that. But there is a very clear kind of longing for something that's a little bit more substantial. And then you have this kind of thing of just being not only satisfied, but reinforcing the what's left of the structure, I guess you could say.
It kind of reminds me of AI, because it can only go so far. It's kind of like the law. It has its rules, but there's no heart, there's no soul there. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't satisfy. It only gives you what it can give you. It can't give you the human part of it. And maybe that's somewhere in there, like the law can give us boundaries and something to follow, but it can't give us the true experience of humanity, all the intricacies in between there. So I don't know.
Law's not supposed to do that. Law is just to help keep things organized, but Like the less you can have to do with the law, the better.
True. Either way,
Right.
he's not satisfied by it. You know what I mean? Something
Mhm.
in him is there's a yearning there for more. So
Yeah, well, Mark's the one who brought up Martin Luther earlier, and he was all about the law and grace dichotomy. And if you're actually living in grace, you never actually have to worry about the law that much.
Mhm.
Only if you're doing something that's going to require a lot of detail. But like you'll make it through. Don't worry about it. But if the speed limit's 70 and you're driving 71, you don't panic when there's a cop.
That's right.
There's no reason to.
Yeah. Was it? It might have been Saint Irenaeus, I think, that talked about how, and for some it might seem a little bit kind of spicy, but he says that that for one who is properly engaging, I'm also paraphrasing and using kind of local terminology here, but for one who's properly engaging in their days, there's no need for a Sabbath per se, and not that and that is not a rejection of everything that's necessary on that day. But he's saying that on every other day, you are also integrating everything you're supposed to be doing on the Sabbath in such a way that you still set that one aside. But you have also, it's not like, oh, well, I only do this one day a week and then I don't do anything else the other days or anything like that. It's like, no, you have full momentum from the rest of the week moving in such a way that it isn't a disruption.
makes sense.
Well, I think that was a very enlightening discussion, and I'm always delighted to hear what you guys think and see what you guys see, because I always miss a lot, and that's why we do these book clubs, is so that we can gather all these things together. Got any parting thoughts here?
Just that I appreciate you getting it going, giving us the structure, and starting out also like kind of giving the highlights so we can kind of move into it. So
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I got nothing. Thank you, Father. This is always wonderful. The 3-month hiatus was definitely felt.
I love an excuse to get back into reading Flannery, so thank you.
Oh, I could provide that excuse. Even the flimsiest of excuses, I can provide that.
That's awesome.
Well, I think Castle, unless you had something.
Just something really quick. I think even though he was not living this, Mr. Shiflett had a really important statement that he said the trouble with the world was that nobody cared or stopped or took any trouble. So if you want to remedy that trouble with the world, then you should stop and take some trouble and care. And that's all I got.
Well, thank you. That is very important. And if this wedding case ever came before my tribunal as a judge, I would happily apply Canon 1096 for matrimonial consent to exist. It is necessary that the contracting parties be at least not ignorant of the fact that marriage is a permanent partnership between a man and a woman, ordered towards the procreation of children through some form of sexual cooperation. We'd have multiple grounds of nullity here. So the law can occasionally at least vindicate something. But fortunately, this is a fictional story, and I don't have to worry about it.
It won't be coming before you. But you'll be ready if it does.
I'll be ready for it does. All righty. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you for your time and attention. And you all have a blessed day.
God bless you all. Take care.